After the pullback yesterday, the altcoin market has presented itself with some opportunities. In this video, I'm going to go through the altcoins that I am looking at buying right now. As we get into this video, if you find it useful and informative, hit the like button. Do really appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, all that good stuff. And do let me know in the comments down below, what altcoins are you buying today? Right, let's get right down into it. Okay, so to start things off with, guys, we're going to briefly take a look at 𝗕𝗓 here. This is an interesting opportunity. We were tracking quite nicely with a bit of a breakout, and obviously the pullback yesterday did hit 𝗕𝗓 quite hard, pulling us right down into that $2 range once again. This actually has recovered reasonably well, but we are expecting a bit of a pullback still to occur here. So I think there's an opportunity to pick up more 𝗕𝗓 at a discounted rate before it continues this growth to the upside. Ultimately, pullback that we had yesterday was a bit of FUD from China again. Going on about Evergrande and whether it defaulted or not defaulted, all that kind of good stuff. But again, after pushing up quite significantly with Bitcoin, a correction was due anyway. And here with 𝗕𝗓, we can actually see the correction occurring a little bit ahead of time. So we can actually see ourselves coming in for a bit of an ABC, right? A bit of a steeper C wave than we would have liked. But nonetheless, it is there and we are moving up. Now, considering we're moving up, I am expecting a small pullback before we continue that growth to the upside. Again, an A, a B, and then a C. So there's an opportunity on the next pullback for 𝗕𝗓 to potentially get into a bit of an accumulation position before that next step to the upside. So I do think that 𝗕𝗓 is an interesting proposition. Love it or hate it, it's got a lot going for it. Lots of things in the pipeline that are going to make Cardano very, very interesting as a project overall, and something I do think is going to be, something that we want to be kind of paying attention to for the long haul. With that being said, the artificial intelligence of advice.io has also got some insights for Cardano. So right now we can see that the market's actually still reasonably greedy for 𝗕𝗓, right? It's actually more coming down towards the neutral areas, but it's not fearful, which is the point here. Okay, so that's an interesting thing just to keep an eye on. Now, the Sharpe ratio has taken a hit yesterday, ultimately bringing it down below the 50-day average. The artificial intelligence is actually saying that the risks might outweigh the rewards for the short term. So again, consider your position. So being objective about this, this is why I'm saying wait for a pullback before potentially piling into 𝗕𝗓 if that's something that you want to do. Obviously, I'm not a financial advisor. Chris is not a financial advisor, and advice.io are not offering you financial advice. What we are doing on the channel here is pointing out things that we are seeing in the charts for you to go and do your own research. Doing that own research might be a part of that, might be using advice.io, right? There's a link in the description down below. It's completely free to use, and you'll get a little bit more insight into what's going on with your cryptocurrency. So we have to be aware that the Sharpe ratio, the risk reward ratio, is not in our favor right now for 𝗕𝗓. With that being said, though, we have not actually dropped down a rating. We're still B2 overall. So for the most part, the underlying data is actually looking pretty reasonable. The moving averages have been obviously negatively impacted recently, but the profitability, the 𝗕𝗓 ratio, and the fear and greed index are all looking okay. Okay, so for an 𝗕𝗓, I do think there's an opportunity to potentially build up a position ahead of that next step to the upside. So that's the first altcoin I'm really paying attention to right now. The second altcoin is 𝗕𝗓𝘗𝑡. So 𝗕𝗓𝘗𝑡 had a bit of a run recently. Obviously, we had some pretty good growth. And then obviously, we had a natural kind of pullback. Now, I think we've actually completed that ABC again. We can see that we pulled back in the same way that we did with Cardano, reaching a little bit steeper on the C wave than we'd have liked. But again, there's FUD in the space that caused that. And ultimately, allows us to think that we've corrected. Now, this yellow box would be my kind of buying area. We are obviously just above that, but I am expecting a pullback, okay, as we continue to head up into this overbought area. Okay, so we went from oversold, we pushed up. So let me actually just remove that. And what we're actually looking for now is to find this area of overbought and bring it back down into our oversold area. This is going to be the opportunity as we potentially come back down into our buy zone ahead of a big move to the upside. And obviously, we are tracking towards our 618702786 and the cup and handle pattern at 22 cents. So overall, everything's looking pretty good for 𝗕𝗓𝘗𝑡 here, but do expect to pull back into my buy zone, and then from here we're looking to track up. And again, if we jump over to the advice.io dashboard, check out that underlying data. We have actually dropped down a rating. We were top tier, an A2 rating, which is the best we've ever seen a cryptocurrency get on the platform, right? But we've actually dropped now down to an A3 rating for 𝗕𝗓𝘗𝑡. So something in the underlying data has changed. We actually take a look at the fear and greed index, and this is exactly it. Basically, some fear seeped into the market here for VeChain whilst profits were being taken. We say this all the time. When the market is incredibly greedy, that is when profits are taken. And basically, we're an A1 from a fear and greed index, as in extremely greedy. And we just actually pulled down to an A3. We're still greedy. We're not neutral. So that's an interesting thing to kind of take note of. So that's the reason that we've actually dropped down a rating overall. The 𝗕𝗓𝗪 ratio is an A2, not a problem. The Sharpe ratio is an A2, so the rewards outweigh the risks. So that's a really positive. Well above the 50-day average. Moving averages are looking pretty good, and the profitability is also very, very good. So there's nothing wrong with our underlying data for VeChain, and just some profits were being taken. And obviously, whilst we're having that correction, we did see that evergrade FUD basically just pull us down a little bit lower than we were expecting, so I had to just redraw the chart a little bit. But ultimately, yeah, we're right back in this buy zone. We're looking to continue that growth to the upside. So I am expecting pretty big things to come in the weeks for VeChain. So definitely an opportunity to be had here, in my opinion. But that is all it is. It's important that you do your own research, specifically with any of these altcoins. As I said, I'm not a financial advisor. So the next altcoin that I'm looking at in detail is going to be harmony_ONE. So harmony_ONE pulled back quite nicely, right? In a very similar way that we saw with many of these other altcoins. They peaked up quite nicely up here. They pulled back for a B, or for an A, then pushed up for a B, a very shallow one, because Evergrade actually took advantage and pulled us down much lower, faster than I was expecting. I was actually hoping that we'd push the B wave a little bit higher, up towards our 31 cent before we had pulled back down. Now, this actually puts us into an opportunity again, as we're overbought right now, and we've got this little buy zone kind of scoped out down here that could allow us to kind of pull back into this zone before going and taking the next level. We can find resistance at 29.5 cents, so I'm now actually thinking that we are likely to pull back down towards our 28 cent area of support. And this is an area that's previously resistance. As you can see, once Evergrade FUD brought us down, we kind of got stuck behind this 28 cent block, and then we broke through it, but we are expecting a back test, in my opinion. This could either be 28.6 or 28 cent flat. So this is the area that I'm looking at, scoping out to see if there's an opportunity to accumulate a little bit more harmony_ONE before that, taking that next step back to the upside. We've got a bit of growth, obviously, in this one before we go ahead and actually take out some new all-time highs that we were tracking previously. So again, everything's looking pretty good. Everything pretty much from our triangular wedge, our Elliott wave triangle, pushing up into our impulsive moves, getting the correction, and now obviously we're just trying to work our way back up and really continue that growth to the upside. So harmony_ONE is definitely an interesting project that you might want to keep an eye on. When we jump over to the charts here and take a look at the harmony_ONE underlying data from an advice.io artificial intelligence perspective. Okay, so harmony_ONE has actually come down from a A3 rating to a B1 rating. Okay, so something has in its underlying data has obviously changed and shifted. And what we're going to do is actually just take a look. So we obviously have the fear and greed index at a B3 rating. We can see this has taken a dive, and it's definitely below the market fear and greed. So ultimately, what we're actually looking at here is a bit more of a neutral position, almost fearful for harmony_ONE right now. And also this comes as a lot of people were FOMOing in potentially at those highs that it was being set, only to see those profits get taken off the table and the price to fall back down. And obviously everything that's been going on yesterday increases that amount of fear in the space. Now, ultimately, this is just shaking out retail investors who do not really know what's going on. And right now, all you're really looking at is a potential opportunity, because our Sharpe ratio is actually an A2, above the 50-day average. The rewards outweigh the risks. So if there's fear up for sale, the Sharpe ratio is indicating that you might want to buy it up. Obviously, not financial advice. advice.io, they want to give you the tools to make your own decisions, but they don't actually give you any buy or sell signals or anything like that. But the tools are very, very good. They've been more accurate than I can count. So definitely worth checking it out if you haven't done so already. Now, the profitability is right up there as an A1, and the moving averages are an A2. The 𝗕𝗓𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘 an A2. So basically, there's nothing wrong with that underlying data. We've come down a rating for no other reason other than fear. So right now, that's the only metric that's really been affected by what happened yesterday. So again, this makes it a really interesting proposition. When we take a look at the charts, we're looking overbought. We're looking to kind of pull back as we find resistance at 29 cent and potentially come down to 28 cent before pushing up past 29 in the future. So I think overall, harmony_ONE is a project that potentially has some opportunities in it, and something that I'm looking at purchasing up today. So as we come back in, we have one last one I want to kind of talk about. This is a project that was tracking really well yesterday from a chart point of view. 𝗖𝗢𝗠𝗪𝗏 were indicating some potential problems with the Sharpe ratio, and obviously the FUD came in and brought this right the way down. Obviously we've recovered quite well, and I am expecting to find resistance at 12.3 with the opportunity to bring this back down and pick it up maybe at around 11.7. So I think there's an opportunity in Anchor before we get this back on track, as we were looking to track towards moving up towards our 618 area of the chart. Anchor has been tracking quite beautifully for quite some time, as we had the breakout over here, we tracked down, we pushed up into our 786 and got rejected, pushing back up, and then we started to track this again. We're looking ready to take that next step to the upside before the Evergrade news broke, and obviously that has affected us quite negatively, but ultimately things are looking pretty interesting for Anchor. So when we jump into the 𝗲 dashboard, we take a look at the data for Anchor, we'll see it's still an A3 cryptocurrency rating overall. The Fear and Greed Index is a B1, which is meaning pretty neutral, right? It's not fearful, it's not greedy. The Sharpe ratio has taken a hit, and it is indicating that the risks outweigh the rewards, and therefore we might not want to have exposure to Anchor right now. This is why I'm saying expect to pull back and accumulate in these key areas. Right now, this artificial intelligence is saying that this is not an optimum time to potentially have exposure to this asset. With that being said, though, as a hodler, I think that you have to ride through some of these things. And for Anchor, although the Sharpe ratio is not necessarily aligned to my personal thinking, it is something that we should seriously consider. Just because I'm investing does not mean that you should be in this particular project either. So do use 𝗲.io to make your own decisions. For me personally, I think this is a small blip on the Anchor radar. After the recent moves that it's been making, it's understandable that that there's a reasonable amount of fear coming in, profits were being taken. But overall, as the fundamentals of this project are very, very solid, I do think long term, and this is a project that I want to have exposure to. So although the Sharpe ratio is talking about more about here and now, today, tomorrow, it's important that we obviously acknowledge that that's a very short-term time frame and short-term thinking. For me personally, I'm a long-term investor. I like exposure to Anchor for the long term, for at least for the end of this bull run. So although the Sharpe ratio is indicating that we don't necessarily want to be buying right now, I'm looking at this in an interesting and different way. Other than the Sharpe ratio, everything else is pretty much on track, right? It's the only metric that is concerning me from the underlying data perspective. And when we come into the chart, obviously, taking a look at the opportunities that do lie here, personally, I think there's an opportunity to be had here with a big push to the upside overall. So obviously, we tracked this bigger A wave down. We're looking for a B, and then eventually we'll potentially come in for a C, which might be coming down much lower. This could be what the artificial intelligence is indicating to us. We could be looking at a 10-cent anchor at some point in the future. With that being said, though, there's also the ability to say that this was a freak occurrence, and actually this will not form an ABC move. Instead, this could have been the end of an ABC. Okay, so in order to do that, we'd have to check some different time frames, like the 8-hourly. And see that actually we have up here, we had the A, we had the B, and we had the C. It could actually be that this move completes a bigger ABC. Okay, so again, one to kind of be mindful of, and one thing that we'll know for sure is whether when we kind of continue this growth to the upside, what happens next. So again, this is one I'm watching. I'm keeping an eye on it. I would like to extend my position with it, and I am looking at 11.7. But if we do dip down lower than this, I will probably hold off until I actually get a bit of a clearer picture as to what is going on with those technicals. I was quite happy when we were up here before Evergrade. Everything was tracking quite nicely. A good push to the upside was expected, but that has deviated away. So now I'm just going to give it a bit of time to see exactly what happens. But if we do end up resting on 11.7 and we're oversold, that might be my entry point. So guys, I'm going to leave that video there. Those are the altcoins that I am paying attention to today. Do let me know in the comments down below, what are the altcoins that you are buying? I'm really interested to know what people's interests are, what projects they're looking at, and what they are looking to accumulate. Guys, if you found this video useful and informative, hit that like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe, tap that bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. With this said, done, and out of the way, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.